All right. Let's talk about the latest and greatest in chess drama. It feels like it's never ending. Like there's always something new. All we had to do was wait until the world Blitz. Blitz with the pieces moving, the hands moving a little quick. That's where things get sloppy. And FIDE just posted this. They tweeted this. Decision from the chief arbiter at the World Blitz Championship. This is regarding Daniel Dubov against Jan Nepomniachtchi. So they were playing on board 2. This was in round 11. And these are the moves of the game. I'll show you guys the actual game in a sec. But the official ruling from the arbiter after reading this is that he's awarding no points for the game. So he says, after checking the game, I waited till both players finished their games and asked them to confirm if they had played the actual moves in the game. They confirmed yes. They didn't see any problem. And then his decision to award no points for the game rather than a draw is because of the FIDE law of chess. Players shall take no action that will bring the game of chess into disrepute. And then options available to the arbiter with penalties, reducing the points scored by the offending players. In his eyes, both players are offenders here, responsible for the result. He considers they prearranged the result of the game, and his opinion is based on the moves they played. Based on the moves they played, well, what are the moves they played? This is the game. See for yourself. Knight f3, Dubov with the white pieces. This is in the World Blitz. Knight f6, knight d4, knight d5, knight b3, knight b6. I think you get the idea. And after they manage to get both knights swapping positions, the game was agreed drawn. And it was agreed drawn. It wasn't a 3-time repetition, nothing like that. So although they made 12 moves, they made approximately 0 moves of substance. Perhaps the first 2, knight f3, knight f6. Okay, so because of this game, the arbiter, as we just read, he confirmed with the players afterwards, did you actually play this game? They both said yeah, didn't see any problem with it. And then the arbiter, based on something that is well within his rights, reduced, instead of half-half, he gave both players 0. So the equivalent of both of them losing this game. And in the World Blitz Championship, let alone any tournament, but when the stakes are as high as a World Championship, obviously to have half a point just taken away from your score is quite serious. But FIDE is doing it, in this case, maybe because they're salty about Nepo and the lounge complaints. No, I have no idea about that. But certainly because I believe that they believe they're being made fun of. That they're being mocked a little bit. That's what I think. Because guess what? This has happened all over the place in chess. In fact, although I don't have an example to show you, I can promise you that almost these exact moves have been played in other rated games. 100%. The whole swapping the knights thing, or like just funny draws from strong players, especially between friends, colleagues, happens all the time. Something as outrageous as this. But it's never, I've never really seen FIDE take a stand the way they're taking right now. So you can kind of be like, oh, why are they all of a sudden doing it now? There's so many other things to compare it to. But then you could also say, well, they should have done it earlier, so how can you really hate on them for making the right decision now? To show you some other examples, I mean, this is a classic one. Don't know about prearranged, but you can imagine the guys are kind of having some fun here. This is Magnus and Hikaru. Magnus plays King E2. I don't think they arranged this, but I think Hikaru would definitely not risk losing a game to the bomb cloud, so he had to play King E7. And then the guys repeated moves like this. Okay, that was a bit of fun. I thought it was a great moment. I actually don't remember the implications in the tournament at the time, but that's just kind of a funny draw that two top players have made. If we're looking at another quick draw from the event in question. How about the exact same guy? We're talking about Dubov. He just made that draw with Nepo. How about earlier in the tournament? He played this game. D4, D5, knight F3. End of game. That's it. That's the game. Agreed to a draw. Handshakes all around. They didn't overturn this result. They didn't turn this into 0-0. And why didn't they? In my opinion, it's because of the mockery element. First of all, it's a slippery slope. You can't just start, making all draws in the first 10 moves 0-0. It's ridiculous. Chess played at the highest level for sure is a draw. Also, there's a lot of strategy to making a draw in a tournament. That's just part of tournament strategy. You're like, okay, I don't want to go all out here. This is also the round that Nepo and Dubov did. It was also the last round of that day. So they're like, okay, let me just make a draw and go home. Like, I don't need to fight right now. But like I said, slippery slope. So in this one, why didn't they overturn the result? I think it's because of the mockery angle. When you move the knights like that, you're clearly illustrating that not only have you pre-planned this, because if you didn't pre-plan it, there's no way that you would just play knight d4, right? But maybe they didn't pre-plan it, and it's more like they're buddies, and if you see one of them do this, it's kind of your call to just match it, because they just don't really want to fight against each other in tournaments, and I can understand that. You don't want to play against your buddy, like you're both fighting for first place. It's like, okay, let's both draw and move on. But the way they did it was in such a way that FIDE probably felt like they were kind of taking the piss a little bit out of FIDE, and it doesn't look good. It just kind of looks like a joke. Whereas this, at least you can be like, okay, the guys clearly didn't want to play. They wanted to draw. They played d4, d5, knight f3, and made a draw. At the very least, you could say that this could be two players who, white goes like this, plays knight f3, and says, hey, do you want to draw? Black can say no, right? There's nothing fishy about what Dubov is doing here. He's playing normal chess moves. Whereas knight f3, knight d4, something weird is going on. So I think it's because of the joke angle of their game, where they've clearly admitted, basically by the moves, to prearranging it. And that does happen. But they made it just so blatantly obvious that FIDE had to do something. Take this game, for example. This was in the final round of the Women's World Rapid Championship that just happened. White, a Grandmaster, 2,500 against an International Master, 2,200. I saw Susan Polgar tweet about this as well. All of a sudden, White plays 2 moves, 3 moves, and offers a draw. Knight c3 and draw. And this basically awarded first place to the player with the black pieces here. And it was like one of the strangest things. Like, what? Wait a minute. If you had actually played the game as white, you could have fought for a top place in the tournament. But a draw maybe secured her a top 3 placement, some money, some significant prize fund, right? And these chess players have to get paid. This was also just a 3-move draw. Did they prearrange it? Definitely not. I'm quite sure they didn't. Obviously, you're more suspicious of players that are from the same federation, that are colleagues. Here, that's not the case. Obviously, as black, if you get a draw offer here, you're first place in the tournament, you're saying, absolutely, handshake. Let's secure the tournament win. I don't think they prearranged it, but it was also a draw within 3 moves. You're not really playing the game here. But again, there's no mockery being made of the game. It's just a quick draw. Okay, this is another game from the World Blitz Championship just earlier this morning. This was Mamedyarov and Maxime. Okay, they end up playing 9 moves. This is some known theory, and they agree to a draw here. Right? Is this something that you're going to reduce to 0-0? Never. I mean, chess would just be unplayable if you're going to take games like this and make it 0-0 instead of a draw. That's just insane, right? But then it's like, when do you draw the line? Is the Berlin draw going to be like impossible for top guys to play? If you ban them drawing in 2 moves, all they're going to do is draw in 10 moves. If you ban 10 moves, they're going to draw in 20. Like, they're going to find a way to draw if they want to draw. But here's what I do agree on. This is stupid. This is just dumb. I don't like it. It looks bad for chess. It's literally a world championship. You want chess to be taken seriously? This is stupid. And FIDE can't sit there and have their top ambassadors for the game in a world championship do shit like this and think it's okay. So, I mean, guess what? You just took it a little bit too far. You could say that. They took it too far. Like, if you're going to make your draw, play the goddamn Berlin, right? The arbiters can't do anything about that. Ultimately, if players want to make a draw, they will. That'll always be the case. You don't have that in other sports because there isn't really this like element of if everything's played perfectly, it is a draw anyway. And draws aren't really possible in most sports. So very unique to chess, but this is a joke. It is. I'm sorry. I can even look back at my chess career, and I've probably had a few funny games that I've played against my buddies when I didn't want to play. Absolutely. Totally guilty. But was the stage as big as this? No, absolutely not. Would I be upset, honestly, if the result was overturned? Probably not. I would be annoyed at the time, the same way I would be annoyed if I violated the dress code and they were like, going to kick me out of the tournament. It's like, I'm a little salty about it, but at the same time, I have to admit, like, they have a point. So, fully agree with them voiding the result. But it's not really fixing an overall problem, but it does fix this problem. This looks like a joke, whereas this looks like 2 guys that showed up to the game and ultimately, like, didn't want to overexert themselves. And it's a total strategy to not want to play your hardest every single game. Guess what? The World Blitz Championship is so many rounds. Like over 20 rounds of chess. If you're playing your heart out every single game, full games, you are going to be tired. It is absolutely a strategy and a legitimate one to take an off game, right? Agree to a draw. That's how it works. And you cannot take that away from chess players, and you shouldn't. Ridiculous to attempt to. But, you could at least have the dignity as the players to make it look presentable. Players can always prearrange draws if they want to. You cannot stop that. It's just impossible. But you're going to have examples from game after game. This is another one. Artemiev and Arjun Erigaisi from the World Blitz. This is 9 moves, right? Look at this game. Exchange Slav. And these guys actually repeated moves. Bishop f4, knight h5. To me, this is way above board. Like, you don't even think twice about this game. This is a repetition. Repetition always feels a little bit more acceptable, but still, both of these guys had the same energy as Dubov and Artemiev in this game. They just didn't really want to play. If they wanted to fight a little bit harder, they probably would have chosen a different opening. So you can't crack down completely on those quick draws. Players will draw if they want to. It's a legitimate strategy. But I believe that you can crack down on nonsense like this, where the guys are kind of just like making fun of FIDE almost. This is almost like a you won't do anything about it moment. And guess what? They did something about it. I think that's what happened here. And I honestly really don't disagree with FIDE on this one. How are you going to sell chess to anyone when you've got guys doing this? Like, this is just, hey, we're looking for sponsors for the World Blitz Championship. Yeah, you can expect high quality games like this one, really long struggles, good fights from the strongest players in chess. So it's like, okay, buddy, you're not getting my money, that's for sure. So that's my take on it. I also saw ChessBase India uploaded this. I wanted to see what this was all about. But this is the game.
Maybe I should delay it for a couple of minutes. Yes? Like guaranteed draw. Draw with mercy. Two moves. Yeah.
I mean, this is terrible. This is terrible, terrible audio. And they're saying stuff in Russian here, which I don't know what they're saying. But this is like the worst audio snippet you could ever have.
Maybe I should delay it for a couple of minutes. Yes? Like guaranteed draw.
So he's talking to Dubov, and he's saying like maybe I should delay it for a couple of minutes to guarantee the draw or something. Okay.
Draw with mercy.
So what was just said was over under how many moves? That was MVL, because I can tell. Over under how many moves? MVL says.
Two moves.
And Nepo's like 2 moves. It's like you can't possibly have a worse you can't possibly have a worse audio leak. And then we'll see them actually play the game. I don't know what they're saying in Russian here. I'm sure it can't be much better. So I wonder when the game starts. I'll just skip ahead to when it starts. But they're talking a lot in Russian. I'm sure someone has a better translation. Like, if someone actually has the Russian translation, like, I'm sure there's much more, like, going on. So, I'll just leave that for someone else.
So, let's start.
Nepo's like, you deviated from our range. I mean, so I mean, that's the video, right? I mean, did you expect something different? Here's the thing, draws will always be prearranged in chess if players want it enough. Totally. But you can at least put on, like, you can at least play the goddamn Berlin or something. I do think there's a distinction between doing this, and then the next step is like maybe a 2-move draw, like d4, d5, knight f3. I think that's a step up from this. And then a step up from that is maybe like a 9-move draw, repetition, Berlin draw. Like, it kind of goes up from there. And you can always make the argument that they're all the same. I think that's ridiculous. This is clearly different. For me, it's too much. I don't know if FIDE's decision will stick. They've basically removed half a point from Nepo and from Dubov in the World Blitz, which is quite serious. Sounds like, you know, slap on the wrist, but that's the difference between, you know, first and not first. It absolutely could be. Both of these guys are fighting for the top spots here. I mean, we're dealing with more than a slap on the wrist, but I agree with it. I do. I think that this is too far, and it'll obviously remind players that you can't do stuff like this anymore. You can't. So it's a tough call because the punishment is harsh, but unless you have a punishment like that, you're never going to get people to actually listen. Now, this is what I was saying at the start of this video is, you know, if something is, let's say, not right, like they've been doing this for a long time, and you can see a lot of other examples in the world, tons of games where there's been, you know, nonsense moves played. Even if it's one of my own games, I would be like, yeah, you know, like if I've done it before and it was sanctioned, I would have been okay with that. I would have been pissed off at the time, but guess what? If it happened to me once, I would never do it again. And that's probably how it should be. I get it. It's two guys that didn't want to play. They're having some fun, but it doesn't look good, so I'm okay with it. Just because it should have been stopped sooner doesn't mean that you can't agree with it being stopped now. That's how I feel. Don't think this should be okay. FIDE doesn't do a lot of things correct. They really don't. But I'm okay with this one. But this has pretty serious implications. I don't know if they're going to get their points back, if this ruling is going to stand, if the players are going to appeal. Nepo's probably on life tilt after the lounge complaint and now this. So we'll just have to see what happens. But this is the latest drama from the FIDE World Blitz Championships.